Hello, I have here an atlas of New Hampshire. You know what's in an atlas? It has lists of cities, lists of highways connecting those cities. But imagine if I took this map and I had no city names on them, no town names on them. I could still tell what was important on the map. The nodes where lots of different highways meet, presumably are cities, where a fewer highways meet are probably towns. And so a map gives you lots of things. It not only lets you know where something is in terms of latitude and longitude, but it also gives you this sense of importance. It gives you connections between things. It lets you know distance. So how does this compare to this thing that we have on websites called a sitemap? Lots of people have been asking me about sitemaps since I released our latest SEO rankings. And they say, well, shouldn't a sitemap solve these index problems? If not all of my URLs are getting indexed by Google, why isn't Google seeing them from the sitemap? Well, a sitemap is much more like this thing in the beginning of the atlas. This long list of cities. Because a sitemap doesn't give you a sense of importance or connection or distance. It's just a list of URLs and dates. So it's not really a map at all. It's a lot more like an inventory. It lets you know that something exists, where it is, in the sense that a URL is both a place and a thing, and it lets you know when it was last updated. So it's more like if this index at the front of our atlas here included a list of when the city lot maps changed so that you knew that you had to go get a new map. Not by taking the sitemap, just a list of URLs. It does so by crawling, because as it moves from one page to another, it can figure out how many links are pointing to one page, pointing away from one page to other pages. And there it gets connections, and those connections are what determine a sense of importance, and the number of connections it takes to get from one page to another gives it a sense of distance, right? So Google's actually making the map. All that you're providing is a list of cities that you think ought to be included in the map. But just because something is listed in that inventory doesn't mean that it's actually going to be indexed, let alone crawled at all by Google. In fact, as I showed in our last video, we recently had a client come to us after a relaunch of a site, and only 5% of their URLs were indexed by Google, even though all of their URLs were listed in a very large sitemap. And they thought, well, the sitemap has us covered. But I think what Google sees when it sees that sitemap is, okay, sure, you have all these URLs, but how on earth are we going to contextualize them? As in, where do they exist in the map? If you simply say Cleveland, but Cleveland doesn't exist in a place, and we don't know that it's in Ohio. We don't know what highway connects it to Columbus or whatever other city. What do we know about Cleveland? We don't know anything. We just know the name Cleveland, right? We don't have any sense of its importance, its proximity, its connections. So what does a sitemap actually do for you then? If you're bothering to make this file and submit it to Google, what's the point? Well, the point is that it's your inventory of all the pages that you have, and it's your means to compare what you know you've produced to what Google says that you've produced, right? What Google has bothered to index and promote in its search results. And it's the only way that you can really get that information into a tool like Google Search Console. You submit those sitemaps, and then you can look at what's called the indexation report on those sitemaps. So you can say, okay, I've submitted 10,000 URLs. How many of those has Google put into its index? Why are some of them missing from the index? Is there a problem with them? Is there a technical problem? Did I submit duplicates? Did I submit things that I've marked to be not indexed? So there are rules that you can do to do that. Like maybe you want to exclude events or job listings or some other page that you think isn't really pertinent to search results, but that you're still posting on the open web. So I think the way to think about a sitemap in practice isn't that a sitemap is a tool for Google to use to find all your URLs. Sometimes it may do that. Sometimes Google may use the timestamp on there, see that, okay, multiple URLs have had their timestamp change. Although I'm skeptical that it even does that, because Google kind of figures out what's being updated frequently on your site, and it's going to trust its own experience and its own records a lot more than your reported data, because Google just tends to be very skeptical of user reported data. So instead of it being this tool for Google to find your URLs, I think you should view it as it's a tool for you to figure out problems with indexation on your site. So it's not something that solves an indexation problem. It's a tool that allows you to diagnose indexation problems and figure out why all your web pages aren't in Google. So I hope that clarifies things, and that kind of understand a little bit more of how sitemaps work in the real world. And until next time, I'm Cord Bloomquist at Tallest Tree Digital. Thanks, everyone.